Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to...
Is Europe missing a right-wing pro-EU party?
This video is sponsored by
Why you
Nebula.
said it like that?
Imagine
Oh
this.
no.
I don't know. This is interesting thought. I don't feel like they're missing anything, but let's see.
A right-wing to far-right party that is pro-EU.
I feel like there's like so many, like even particulars, like even seeing like in some countries, the differentiating point for one candidate is not much for the other one to win. And so it's like, okay, you just vote for the one that's a little bit closer to what you align with.
Yeah, so I think the idea that what this video is gonna be like is because generally speaking, pro-right, like a right wing, is anti-EU, more like a nationalistic, right? So this basically he's saying it's a right wing, but it's also pro-EU, which
Oh,
mean
that seems like I don't know, a paradox.
yeah, it's kind of a contradiction.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but let's see what claim he makes.
That is in favor of European integration and wants European answers to Europe's biggest problems. Now, do we have such parties in Europe? We are not so sure. Let's first take a look at some of the most far-right parties in Europe. The AfD from Germany, Reconquest from France, Revival from Bulgaria, and quite a few more across the entire continent. These
Lithuania.
parties are very conservative and also pretty clearly hard Eurosceptic. They want to undo European integration, not build on it. The
Really?
AfD, for example, has called for a referendum on the euro and wants most EU
Can you
powers
speak on
handed back to
Lithuania?
national.
No, what can I say Lithuania?
You're on this list.
Okay, it's a minority party probably has 100 people in it. What do you want me to say about
Only
it?
100.
I don't know. It's like, come on.
Governments. These parties are part of the European parliamentary group called Europe of Sovereign Nations. Now, a very quick explainer. In the EU, all national parties team up into bigger political groups. There are 8 of these groups in the European Parliament. Think of them like massive coalitions of like-minded parties across the entire continent. The
The list is interesting. Hold up. You see, the one on the left almost look like,
The left?
yeah, almost like a Lithuania flag, kind of like the quadrant,
Uh-huh.
and then but the one on the right almost like Estonian flag. It's interesting.
That's the thing. I would say that you
Why?
no.
It's interesting. The color choices look
It's so
interesting. to
silly.
me.
It's so silly.
Look interesting. The color choices.
Ooh.
Like flags.
Sovereignists consist of these 8 parties, and to make sense of all of these political groups, we created a big, beautiful political map. Naturally,
Ooh,
the
big,
ESN group
beautiful
falls firmly in the
political
bottom
map.
right quadrant: conservative, nationalist, and very anti-EU. Close to the sovereignists, we've got another alliance, the Patriots for Europe. This is also a group of right-wing conservative
Patriotas.
parties from across the continent. It includes some big players, like Le Pen's National Rally, Orban's Fidesz, and Anno 2011 from Czech Republic. Now, they're not quite as Eurosceptic as the sovereignists, but instead they call for a Europe of nations, which basically means more power back to national governments, a return to a mainly economic union, and the power for each country to veto any law that comes from the EU. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we've got the more liberal left-leaning forces, like the Green parties across Europe. They're very progressive and very pro-EU. They often champion even more European integration. For example, they've called for a European federation, removing the national veto in foreign policy, and doing more together, not less. Now, as for the other European groups, let's break them down
So
quickly.
when you say in Europe they just have more parties, these are the parties they're talking about.
Kinda, but no, these are coalitions. These are not even the parties. The
biggest group is-
parties, you see all those little dots? Those are the
Mhm.
parties. And in every coalition, you see how many little dots there are.
When you say dots, what do you mean dots?
These
Oh, okay, on the left.
these are the parties. you
And
see.
which one is the
The
on
top
top
is the coalition, yeah.
Ah, okay, okay.
So this chart is gonna be
Ah.
coalitions, but within coalitions, then there are these little parties.
Mm.
is EPP. They're center-right and pro-EU, and sit in the middle towards the right end of our graph. The second biggest party is the Social Democrats. They lean center-left and pro-European, so they sit in the top left quadrant. And then we have Renew Europe, a centrist group. They're strongly pro-EU, even more so than the EPP, and clearly believe in a more united Europe. On the far left, we've got the left. This group includes communist and radical left parties. They're extremely socialist and generally not fans of EU integration.
Ooh, like for
So we place
example,
them
let's see like Spain,
Basically,
Germany.
all the countries that were not part of Soviet Union. Not a single ex-Soviet Union country on there.
Oh, they can't relate.
Yeah, they don't want none of that shit back. So
Is
these people think, oh,
that's
communism was better. Well, guess what?
that's Italy?
I do believe I see Italy, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, France, Sweden,
Mm.
Finland, Denmark, Greece,
Mm.
Cyprus,
I would think maybe Italy
Germany.
can maybe understand with fascism, like have some understanding.
Fascism is not communism.
I know, but in terms of like what's close to it, like to an understanding of it, like
Yeah, basically all the countries that didn't have to deal with Russia. Okay,
mm,
good for them.
in the bottom left quadrant. And finally, there's the ECR, the European Conservatives and Reformists.
you know,
They're
that reminds me, like when we were studying in high school and we learned about communism,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of students felt like, oh, that's not so bad. Like the idea of
The
it
idea of it is not
is
bad.
not
On paper, it
bad.
sounds good. Yeah, on paper, it sounds
Yeah,
good.
it's
Yeah.
just in the wrong hands. It's like, okay, whoa.
The problem with communism, it was people got lazy. Work
Mm-hmm.
became like there is even a saying that you work like you're like working for the government, not for yourself. So you basically
Mm-hmm.
you come, you're just milking the. I guess here it's called milking the clock.
Mm-hmm.
So we say that, oh, you just work for a government. Like it's just because your productivity doesn't matter. So
Mm-hmm.
you can come in, chill, just whatever, do sit, drink all day. That's what people do. They would drink on the job and go home
Mm-hmm.
because you can't get fired. Because the government assigns jobs to everybody. Everyone gonna have some sort of job. So you just go there. You can't get fired. You will get
Mm-hmm.
paid the same. It don't matter. Nothing matters.
I
Very
wonder
bleak outlook. There's nothing to look for in the future.
I wonder if there's like homelessness.
No,
No.
everybody's provided a house. No,
But then you always gonna have the personality types that want to do more.
and
And
they can't.
they think this
Then
they
it's
can't.
the
This
problem
this
for those
problem.
people. The system works for people that are content with just
Mm-hmm.
surviving, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Because we talk about content and the country, which one was it?
Finland.
Finland.
Mhm.
They understand content. I think they're on here for.
Yeah, there's
They're here.
Finland. Yeah, not
Mm.
on the left. There,
Yeah.
yeah, there was
There-
one
That
party.
to
Yeah.
me, that's interesting because they understand content, but the way it is different from what you will see in communism.
And communism, yeah, it just was a lot of drinking because people had nothing to do, or just
Mm-hmm.
the lazy, and kind of life loses meaning a little bit because there's, as I said, there's nothing to look forward to.
Mm.
So you just go day by day, same shit.
Because what we argued was that, well, you don't have to work to pay bills, but you get to do your passions. Like you would
Ha!
actually do what you want to do and
No,
not actually have to like, okay, you have to work
that
to work.
no, that's not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
You do what the government assigns you to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's no passions.
Mm-hmm.
You whatever your assigned spot is, maybe you can like ask for like something else if it opens up. Maybe that's obviously would depend on the government, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like, oh, government just pays me, I'm gonna go be a painter. No, motherfucker, you're gonna go work in construction because we need construction workers.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it works.
conservative group, but very split on EU integration. Some support reforming it, others want less of it. So we'll place them somewhere in the middle, but we'll come back to them later. Now, take a look at this graph, and what do you notice? The top right quadrant, right wing to far right and pro EU integration, is completely empty. And that brings us to the very big question, why?
Can you go back? Let me
Why
see.
is
Yeah. Mm.
there no major party in Europe that's both right-wing and strongly pro-European? We at EU Made Simple see
Ah.
3 reasons. Firstly, nationalism.
Did you think
And it's
that
very-
way too?
Wait, what?
That right wing and pro European?
No, well, no. Those parties don't exist. It's,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's a paradox.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I.
contradictory. Yeah.
core, right-wing politics includes conservatism, which is about preserving what already exists, what people know and trust. In modern European history, that usually means the nation state. One flag, a sovereign government, one set of laws, and one cultural identity. So it's no surprise that ultra-conservatism can lead to nationalism. And European integration is the exact opposite. It represents change. It means sharing power, and sometimes giving up power to institutions, like the European Commission, the European Court of Justice, and the European Central Bank. And for many right-wing to far-right parties, that goes directly against their core beliefs, against what they call national sovereignty. Reason 2. The EU is seen as left-leaning and woke. Ask many right-wing voters what they think of the EU, and you might hear words like woke, globalist, liberal elite. Why? Because many EU policies are viewed as progressive or left-leaning, especially on climate policy, like the Green Deal and emission targets, migration and asylum rules, or LGBTQ+ rights and anti-discrimination laws. Take Hungary as an example. The EU has sanctioned Orban's government for undermining LGBTQ+ rights and restricting academic freedom. To Orban supporters, this looks like Brussels pushing Western liberal values onto a conservative country. And to be very fair, this...
Why are they a part of the EU?
They want the cake and eat it too. They want the cake, the benefits of EU, but they also want to eat it. Not
that
from...
is so odd.
There's a lot of benefits that come with being in the EU. So you want that funding, you know, visa-less travel, investment. There's a lot of benefits, but you know they also want to have the cake too, because have their own not fully integrated. It's just you know.
This perception isn't totally wrong. For the last 20+ years, the EPP, center-right, and the S&D, center-left, have dominated EU policymaking. So yes, many of the EU's laws do reflect consensus politics that lean more to the center or even center-left than to the hard right. And that brings us to our final reason: populism and anti-establishment politics. Many far-right and far-left parties in Europe today are deeply populist. But what exactly is populism? Well, in short, it's a political style that claims to speak for ordinary people who feel ignored or betrayed by the elites. Populists say things like, the system doesn't work for us, the elites are corrupt, we're here to take it all back. And to them, the EU is the perfect villain. It's seen as distant, slow, packed with unelected officials, and nearly impossible to hold accountable. And when something goes wrong at home, it's convenient to point to the political elite far away in Brussels. It's their fault, not ours. A perfect example of this was during the Brexit campaign, where voters were promised that leaving the EU would free up £350 million a week for healthcare. A clear and powerful message, but it completely ignored the bigger picture, like the economic gains from EU membership, access to the single market, or the funding that flowed back into the UK through subsidies and investments. Still, the message stuck, and it became one of the main reasons the UK voted to leave. That's why so many populist parties lean into slogans like
Do they
"Let's take
have
back."
high regret or no?
UK? We saw the videos. We done reactions.
Do you think
people regret it? Yeah, majority of people regret it. Now,
does that change their like position of the EU? No.
well, they fucked around and found out. Now they want to unfuck around. I don't know. I'm sure they would
So-
love to go back.
They didn't want the cake.
They convinced themselves that the cake is
was
too
no
salty.
good. Ah!
Control, drain the swamp, or put our country first. So, those are the three main reasons why I think this quadrant, right-wing and pro-European, is so empty. But there are some exceptions that come close. And one of them
was a
is
good
Giorgia
one.
Meloni,
That
leader
is
of the
making me
Brothers of
laugh.
Italy in Italy. Now, they're obviously conservative, but they're not as anti-EU as some people make them out to be. Meloni has said that the European Union should focus on the big issues of our time: foreign policy, defense, protecting Europe's external borders, completing the single market, and building a common energy policy. She's even among the 9 EU leaders who signed a joint statement supporting the introduction of qualified majority voting in foreign policy. This means she backs the idea of removing national vetoes so the EU can act more decisively on the world stage. Meanwhile, her party argues national issues should stay with national governments, like social or cultural policy. So, whether Meloni supports more European integration really depends on how you define it. Now, her party, Brothers of Italy, sits with the ECR, the European Conservatives and Reformists. And even the ECR slogan reflects Meloni's idea: do less, do better. Basically a Europe that focuses on fewer things, but does them well. And through that, becomes a stronger player on the world stage. But here's the problem. The
I mean, that
ECR
sounds
is so far
logical.
from united. Take peace from Poland or AUR from Romania. They're much
You should do what you're great at. Not everything. I don't know.
It's basically what it's saying is what we have here. They bring more powers back to the state versus federal. So that's what this is claiming. Bring more powers back. So do less, interfere with our lives less, but what you do interfere, do it great. But they do still want less interference, though.
much more hardline than Meloni is.
I guess it
They're
depends on
firmly
what rights they want to retain.
Yeah, I mean, it's an issue, you know.
Because that's what I want clarity on.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I don't really know exactly what EU kind of like rules on, but if there's certain like rules, groups or categories of rules that okay, this is part of EU, this is not. Like, I like here, how we have like a traffic violations. It's by the state, not by the federal government. So like, I'm sure in Europe too, each country has their own traffic laws. The EU does not set the traffic laws for the other. Maybe EU mandates that the signs are uniform in all the countries for uniformity purposes, but they do not set the individual speed limit for every country, right? So stuff like that. Now, gay rights, for example, does EU set the EU level limit, or each country can allow their own? I don't know. But this one of those policies that
one is
could be
tricky.
polarizing, because a lot of
Yeah.
people within a particular country might not want, to legalize gay marriage, but
Because that means they
EU
have to
might,
give gay rights
right, but EU
and
might want to
protections.
that. So I don't exactly know
Oh.
how that would work.
Oh.
against deeper integration in almost any form, even on things like foreign policy or defense. And unlike Maloney, they often present Brussels as a threat to national identity and values. So even if Maloney is somewhat pro-EU in her own way, the ECR as a group is simply too divided to be placed in the pro-integration quadrant. And that leads us to another big problem. Parties within these European political groups only represent voters in their own country. For example, Maloney doesn't represent me in Germany, as her party doesn't run any candidates here. Same goes for France, Spain, Romania, or any other European country for that matter. There's only one real exception to this, a party called Volt, a pan-European party that run the same program in every EU country. They actually campaign across borders, and they want a united Europe. But Volt sits at
This
the
to me
very
make
top
a
left
lot
of
of
our
sense.
Yes, but a lot of people are conservative and they don't want to change. Like, yes, I think the younger people, more educated people, they want a united Europe and more unity because it's better for everybody. But the older people, maybe less educated, maybe not, they want to be stuck in their old ways. They don't want change, and that's it. And they know it is what it is.
our political map. They've moved significantly to the progressive liberal side with their policies. And there's simply no counterweight on the right. No right-wing conservative pan-European party that says we want a strong Europe, but also want to be very tough on migration, and maybe even to protect the role of Christianity in public life. This, my friends, is dearly missing. And if you ask me, dearly needed. Now, I definitely don't agree with everything strong conservatives stand for. Far from it. But I do think conservatism plays a super important role in politics. That's why I think it's a real shame that so many right-wing and far-right parties are always focused on breaking the EU. I feel it would be more constructive if they fought for their ideas within the EU. Bring those conservative policies to the European level. Make your case and shape the system. But the deeper issue, I think,
I think, in terms of conservative politics at the EU level, I think immigration would be one that could be set at the EU level. Because I feel like EU as a whole suffers from illegal immigration, the people that come and just put burden on the system, because essentially they put burden on the system, but they can travel visa free from country to country. So it can be burden on Italy one year, then they move to Germany next year. So the same person puts burden on Germany, then decides to go north to see the snow in Lithuania, then to Finland. The same person could be putting burden on the system all over the Europe. So
it's better to tackle this issue together.
I think the immigration issue should be tackled at the EU level, and it can be like, it could be like pro EU in the sense that it's at the EU level. EU does it, but conservative in the sense that it is strict policy.
is cultural. People still feel their identity mainly with their country. But why is that?
So on the EU level, is that where they can say, oh, this country should take X amount of people, this country should take another
Yes,
X?
that's also at EU level, yeah. And they do that actually. I think EU assigns people to the countries based on the population or income, or like not income but GDP or something. Yeah.
And that's agreed upon.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what it was with the refugees. Yeah, each country had to agree. Was required to agree to take some people. Yeah.
Because for me, it's so different. Because on a local scale, I live in
And
Munich.
you can't
I feel at
deny.
home.
Or have they denied before?
No, I think it's part of the agreement that you have to take in at least some.
Home here. I care about local policies, infrastructure, schools, hospitals, city planning, that kind of thing. Because that's where my day-to-day life happens. On a national level, though, I still feel very Dutch. Even though I don't live in the Netherlands anymore. I connect with the culture, the directness, the
Where do you
tolerance,
live
and
now?
the
In Munich. He lives in Germany, but he's Dutch.
Liberal attitude. And that's why I care about national debates on things like cultural and social policy. And
To
on a
me, he could look
continental
either
scale,
or.
I feel European. Honestly, I love this continent. I've seen a lot of the world, and I'm not going to lie. Europe is simply the best in my eyes. The mix of cultures, the history, the values, the quality of life. It's something worth protecting. And that's why I care about European foreign and defense policy. And because I feel connected at all three levels, local, national, and European, I believe we need different political approaches for each. Some things can only be solved locally. Others,
So he basically proposing implementing the United States of Europe. Because what he's describing is exactly how American government works.
only nationally, and some things, like defense, climate, or trade, can only be solved at the European level. I mean, can my city Munich protect itself from an invasion? Can it sign a trade deal with Brazil? Of course not. You need Europe for that. So instead of trying to tear down that third level, I wish right-wing and far-right parties would start fighting for their ideas at the EU level. Maybe even create a right-wing equivalent of Volt. I think that would get a lot of traction, and deservedly so. If you want to understand Europe better,
Yeah, this would be an interesting if somebody did create that, but it's just the idea on itself is kind of, as you said earlier, paradox, it's contradictory, because just the values are,
so different.
yeah, they're
I
more
feel
like
like
pro-country, not.
yeah, even the individual too is
I
what
think,
you're asking is like very community based.
yeah, I think the challenge of this would be convincing, for example, Lithuanians that you and Poles are this. Well, we don't have a bad relationship with the Poles, but who do? Okay, I don't know who likes, because a lot of people have been in wars with each other in Europe. So you have to kind of put that history aside and convince, okay, we're like almost one and the same, like Lithuania and Poles. It's a lot of people would be, yeah, cool, we have no problem, but there would be those people that maybe fought in the world wars against Polish, or they had that animosity against the Poles, that, oh, we're not the Poles, we're better than Poles, stuff like that. And in other countries too, like we see, in, I don't know, Greece and Turkey, for okay, yeah, that's a great example. They both in the EU, make them believe that, oh, we're one and the same. I'll wait, So it's because basically the idea of to make EU unified, we have to see basically we are the same, and nations do not feel they're the same as others. Whereas here in America, there isn't really nations, like in terms of the
Yeah,
states. It's just a pot of random people together.
but we do have moments where Texas say, "I'm leaving."
Yeah, we get those separatists. California
Yeah.
threatens to leave now that what's going on, in LA and whatnot. Texas want to leave when the Democrat is in office. It happens, but ain't nobody leaving anywhere. And if they did, honestly, California, based on the stats we saw, they could survive all right if they left. So
Wow.
California leaving, it might be a possibility eventually, but yeah, it's hard to unite Europe. The language barriers, cultural barriers, war history. I don't.
Yeah, long history, long, long, long.
It would be
long, long
nice to see it,
history.
but there's a lot of conservatives that
Yeah.
probably just say nope.
better,
But
you're in the
the sooner the better.
Yeah.
right place. We break down the most important EU stories, clear, critically,
I guess that's it.
Can I see the comments?
The EPP is a little more pro-EU than that. It should be a little higher. The EU is not left. What do you mean? Oh, the EU, okay. Economically is very lib-right, encouraging free trade and laissez-faire. It is slightly progressive on social issues, true, but calling EU left is misleading and simply not true. The EU sovereignists somehow never pro-sovereignty when it comes to Russia. Huh. This is all I wanted all along, a party that is proud of its heritage and way of life and is also willing to cooperate with its neighbors to solve greater challenges.
I think a lot of people would like that.
Yeah, but a lot of people would not. That's the issue, I feel like, because people, especially politicians, are opportunists. I feel like if there was a group of people that I kind of had that ideology, there already would be a group formed, because they would want to rise to fame and power with that group. I think for the fact that we don't really see that, I don't know if there isn't that many people that see necessity for that. That not maybe see necessity, but they have that type of outlook, that they feel that way. I don't know.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord, and as always, share as much kindness as possible.